Welcome everybody to Business Insights on the 1st of June 2020. Business Insights is a very exciting webinar series hosted weekly on Mondays at midday by a panel of industry thought leaders for business owners who simply want to be in the know about the latest news and most significant initiatives in the Australian business landscape that impact how they do business. Our panel of advisors aim to inform, educate and provide strategic insights to the changes in the economic, legal and financial landscape that affects small business. We aim to guide our viewers to navigate business challenges throughout COVID-19 and beyond. So let's now meet our panel of industry thought leaders. First up, we're going to welcome Lisa Garrido from Enigma HR. Lisa, welcome.
Hello, good morning everybody. Good Monday morning.
Next, I'd like to welcome Adam Lyle from O'Brien Palmer. Adam, welcome.
Hi, Ian, and welcome to winter.
Next up, we'd like to welcome Sam Qureshi from MoneyClip Private Wealth. Sam, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
Next up, we've got Bernard Tuamau from MGA Insurance Brokers. Bernie, welcome.
Thanks, Ian, and good morning, guys.
And lastly, but definitely not least, we have Daniel Bly from Elevate Property Group. Dan, thanks very much for joining us today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you very much to all of you. Looking forward to contributing.
What we might do is now, we might go to our first panelist, and I'm going to start with Sam Qureshi today. Now, Sam, I've got a question for you. I just want to know, how is the market traveling currently, and what is happening to dividends?
Hey, Sam, you're on mute, mate.
Hasn't come off. There we go. I'm on now. Thank you. Lots has happened in the last week. Obviously, there's plenty of news out of the US. Some of it not so nice. But basically, the market has had a good week still, about 4.2% up. Still some 17% down from February's high. The energy market, the property market and the financials, they haven't done as well. They're still about 25% down. But it's amazing though how the market has been behaving across the board, even though all these very information coming through. So for example, banks had a really great day last week, and they were between 6 and 10% up one day, and they were 3 to 6% down the following day. So it just goes to show that there are people who want to invest, but also very nervous about that. The Macquarie Research put out a note last week about some of the impacts on the income, seeing so many investors are reliant on investment income at the moment. And a typical balanced fund, for example, has had its income slashed from about 3.3% to 2%. So on $1 million, you used to get $33,000 of income. Now you're only getting $20,000. In fact, that's even lower than what you would really get from pension. So it's amazing how much that's actually has dropped. And of course, there's little scope for this to change in the short term, maybe in the next 6 to 12 months, because this pain essentially needs to still be borne by the investors, and particularly the self-funded retirees, who get next to nothing from their cash and term deposits, and now also don't get much from the lower dividend rates. And of course, this means that they've got to dip into the capital to supplement that income. One thing that I would want to warn though is it's very important to not chase very high yields at the same time, because this environment bears more risk, and often higher yields will have higher risks attached to them as well. Thank you. Yeah.
Sorry, we might go to Bernard Tuamau now from MGA Insurance Brokers. Bernard, I was just wondering if you can just please give us an update on general insurance this week.
Yeah, thanks, Ian. So obviously today we saw some more restrictions lifted on the pandemic, and we'll see some pubs, thank God, open, and some clubs as well. Basically, what I've learned, Ian, from this pandemic is that there's no industry that's recession-proof. there was this natural assumption that we had working in the insurance industry that regardless of what was happening in other industries, insurance was one of those safe havens. That's actually not the truth. SME brokers, 66.7% of SME brokers reported that there was a downturn in new policies and a downturn to their income and premium pools. So obviously this has a flow-on effect to everyone, and everyone's doing it quite tough. What we also saw from the pandemic fallout is that, insurers are trying to, adapt to these changes. And there was basically what we call a subscription type model that some insurers may look to take on. So basically what a subscription-based model is that it will allow a consumer take out an insurance on a month-by-month basis, basically turn on the insurance and turn it off. So any product that I guess is customer-centric and has a customer focus is a good thing for the customer. I think it will take a while for us insurers to adapt, and in particular insurance advisors, because we are pretty set in our ways. But at the end of the day, if it's good for the customer, it's good for us. Last weekend, I touched on, although there is a pandemic happening and there is some uncertainty with insurers, that insurance premiums are increasing. I noted a 23% on average increase in insurance premiums. And the reason for this, Ian, and the reason for this is basically previous to COVID-19, we saw some bushfires and some other catastrophes that have all had an impact on the insurance market. So we've saw an 11th straight quarter increase in, I guess the last 12 months, basically. So basically on average, insurance premiums are going up. What does this mean? I think, for us, for SMEs in particular, you need to be mindful of what you're paying for your insurance. Although we're an insurance advisors and we'll always advise our clients to make sure you take out as much insurance as possible, realistically, not everyone's doing that. They're looking at cutting costs, and insurance is one of those costs that they are looking at cutting. What I do say to SMEs is that really consider what insurance you are looking at cutting. For example, if you had some property insurance and for say $20,000 worth of contents in stock versus liability insurance, which one do we decide to cut? Personally, I'll decide to reduce my contents insurance. The reason being is that what you're exposed for. You're up for $20,000. With liability policies and other policies where you were exposed to customers and other third parties, you just do not know how big those claims are going to be. So my advice is really consider what products you decide to self-insure and what products you decide to move on to an insurance policy. Also, last week, I sort of touched on, the biggest industry area or product line that's been affected by COVID-19 is the corporate travel insurance. It's one of the few insurance products that have responded to the pandemic. And I know this space is doing it quite tough. Ian, that's all for me this week.
Thanks very much, Bernie. I really appreciate that. That was some great insight there. Next up, we're going to go to Lisa Garrido from Enigma HR. And Lisa, the question that I have for you this week is can industrial relations change for the better post-COVID-19?
Thanks, Ian, for that question. Well, the recent announcement by the Prime Minister brings promise that industrial relations can change for the better from the business perspective of simplifying the concern with over-regulation and red tape with industrial relations. So basically, in summary, Christian Porter, our industrial relations minister, will chair 5 working groups made up of business and union representatives in the following areas that I'll talk about between now and the release of the October budget, which is due, I believe, on the 6th of October. So the working groups will comprise of the first one, focusing on award simplification, as this is what small to medium-sized businesses deal with every single day. We get heaps of inquiries on a day-to-day basis about whether businesses are compliant with the awards, and it's actually very complicated. So during this COVID period, as we are aware, more than 99 awards have been amended or have been updated, in particular focus on hospitality and retail awards. So definitely award simplification is a big call for the working groups. The next area they're going to be focusing on is enterprise agreement making. As Scott ScoMo says, we've got to get back to the basics on this. And the third is about casuals and fixed term employees. Last week, I did allude to a recent case urging Fair Work Act to be amended, as some casuals have been deemed to be entitled to paid leave despite the cash flow loading being provided for in their employment agreement. So definitely there is a need to fix this and stitch up some clarity in that area. The fourth topic and the working group is compliance and enforcement. As again, ScoMo says, people should be paid properly and unions need to obviously do the right thing, as must employers. So there is a balance between award simplification and enterprise agreement making with protecting employee rights when it comes to this particular focus group, which is excellent. Greenfield agreements and new enterprises is the last focus group in this whole initiative, as this is simply where the new investment will go and the certainty is needed more than ever in that area. So the working groups are ideally supposed to discuss, negotiate, and hopefully come to an agreement, according to the Prime Minister, to hopefully find a pathway to sensible long-term reform. And individuals will be invited to join each group based on their demonstrated experience, their expertise, and that will include small business owners like us, rural and regional operators, multicultural communities, women and families. So this is an excellent opportunity for us to have a voice finally. Another area that is being focused on, that's why I think it is a positive move post-COVID-19, is we are going to be getting better visibility of in-demand skills in the area in the job maker agenda. By the way, I love the fact that you have job seeker, job keeper, job maker, and hopefully it will create better jobs. You know, it's a great PR tactic anyway. But the National Skills Commission, as announced last year, will provide a detailed labor market analysis, including an annual report each year setting out the skills needs of Australia, replacing those old existing lists of apprenticeships and skill migration. That's what Morrison says anyway. So the aim of that job in-demand awareness is to flag any emerging skill shortages, other labour market trends and pressures. And I think small business or small SMEs actually need to be up to date with this. So some considerations I'd like to end for us in small to medium sized businesses is the first thing: will you contribute to your voice being heard through industry associations or by direct comments? Just get involved. Are there areas covered by the working groups, for instance, relevant to your business? And how will you take advantage of keeping up to date with the reform proposal so that you can incorporate this in your business for long-term planning? So the answer to the question is yes, I believe this is a very unique opportunity presented to us as employers and employees due to COVID-19. And of course, the argument to suggest that why did it have to take a pandemic to fortify these discussions is a hot topic, but I'm of a mindset that we should focus on the present and how we can find opportunities in the now for a better future. And I think we do have a chance with this initiative. So make a difference and make your voice heard. That's it for me.
Thank you very much, Lisa. Some really great insights there. I really appreciate it. Next up, we're going to go to Adam Lyle from O'Brien Palmer. And Adam, I was wondering if you could please give us a little bit of background with what happened in the retail sector last week and what should retailers do in the coming weeks?
Yeah, it's interesting, Ian. Look, we've had quite a number of collapses in the retail sector over the last week. A couple of big brands, and unfortunately, there will be more to come. The retail sector coming out of COVID, it's really an interesting time. I want everyone just to cast their mind back to mid last week. Let's say even today, last week, you go into a shopping centre, most of the stores were all still closed. Everyone was super conscious about, social distancing and sanitising and so forth. And if anyone experienced what I experienced on the weekend, and you go to a reasonably major shopping centre, it's like as if nothing had happened. It was just crazy. The amount of people that were out and about was insane. Now, that is, in my mind, just a reaction to the craving for some retail therapy, so to speak. The reality is that that false sense of security that retailers will be falling into need to be very careful about this, because the moment that foot traffic numbers go back up to normality within those larger centres, mark my words, the landlords will say, sorry, I'll have some rent, thanks. And by the way, I'll have the arrears that you haven't paid for this holiday period. I don't care whether or not if this is over, foot traffic's back up, everything's back to normal, I'm providing you with customers, pay the rent. And businesses in the retail sector are literally going to be suffering, just like the Australian economy is going to be suffering for some time. Just to give you some statistics, in 1991, when I started in this industry, the GDP fall was 1.4%, 1.4, two negative quarters of negative growth, but only a 1.4% fall. And Treasury and the RBA met last week and actually determined that the overall economic downgrading will be 10%. So it's 10 times what we had in the recession we had to have. So we've got to be very mindful of the fact that this is not something that's going to click the lights back on and everything's going to be hunky-dory. Retail sector people are, and leisure people are really the ones that have been hit the hardest. How can you come out of it? Well, first of all, don't fall into the false sense of security. Don't think just because you've had one weekend of fantastic numbers that it's going to be a lasting thing, because where's the money coming from overall? If there's been an overall reduction in GDP by 10%, then businesses in the retail and leisure sector, I would argue, would have to at least provision for double that amount of a downgrade. They need to be still negotiating with their landlords. They really should be making sure that they're planning ahead with their people, just like Lisa talked about. They should be planning ahead with their insurances. They should be making sure they know where their stock coming from and how they're going to pay for that. I'm sure you're going to cover off more as well, Ian, in your area. The interesting thing is in the property sector, I'm hoping that Daniel will cover some of this, is that the negotiations with the landlords isn't the easiest thing in the world, because invariably the landlords, like I said last week, are not in a position of strength like the banks are, where they can say, oh yeah, don't worry about it. 6 months, yeah, we can live with that. Landlords have got mortgages to pay and they need to make sure that they're covering those. It's not as easy as just, oh yeah, don't worry about it, have a holiday. So we need to be very careful about these negotiations. We need to not fall into the false sense of security that I suspect a lot of people are. There will be more collapses in the retail and the leisure sectors in the coming weeks. I'm aware of a few others that are already in discussions about the appointment of administrators. There were appointments of administrators over the last few days even. So we're going to see more pain, unfortunately. And hopefully if everyone just gets good advice and stays strong and listens to that advice and provision as well, we should be okay.
Thanks very much, Adam. I really appreciate that. There's some really good insights there. Well, let's go to Daniel Bly from Elevate Property Group. And Daniel, could you just please give us a bit of an update of what's been happening in the property market?
Yes, sure. And thank you again for having me. I like to break it down in between two particular segments. So we've got the selling market. The clearance rates is a common barometer of the strength of the market, and the vacancy rates for residential and commercial properties. So I'll start with clearance rates on the weekend. This is a pretty typical way to get a sense of the market, but 3 reporting houses, Domain, Real Estate, CoreLogic, are all saying it's between 62, 72, 68%, which, to be fair, is actually pretty good and very similar to this time last year. However, I think a grain of salt has to be taken from that context where it's just a lot of less stock on the market, hence the prices are probably falsely inflated by that factor. So you have to be pretty confident and a motivated vendor to put your property on the market, but you're still getting results in good properties, good locations. So in terms of the vacancy rates, I'll stick with the residential component first and foremost. At the moment, it's 3.9 across Sydney, across Greater Sydney, that is. In Sydney CBD, it's 12.5%. That is massive. I've got a property in Chippendale right now, and it's competing. It's a little 1-bedroom. It's competing with 1,500 other properties in the CBD and surrounds. That is a challenging property to lease in amongst the competition that I've got. So that's a kind of a little insight into one particular suburb. Bondi, another suburb where you do tend to get a fair bit of travellers and more transient renting culture. That's at 5.8%. That's not too high, to be perfectly frank. I was looking at data from 2005, and typically in winter it does spike between 4 and 5%. So it's not the end of the world. A hot tip for investors out there: beautiful marketing, excellent communication from your agent, and effective pricing will always reduce your days on market. In terms of the commercial space, the wider theme is that we're still yet to see the impacts completely, but certainly negotiations are tough in some instances. Some negotiations are really effective, where again, landlords that get it, so to speak, are really responding to tenants that they want to keep, because they know if those tenants depart the property, getting another tenant at the similar or equivalent rate will be downright impossible. So good investors, smart investors, are the ones negotiating, talking openly and fairly. And ideally, as Adam says, you know, this little sugar hit that we had on the weekend is not short term. It does last longer, but I think we all know that we're on for a tough few months ahead. That's it for me.
Thanks, Dan. I really appreciate that. And thank you for joining us today. It's fantastic to have you on board. We might just go back to Sam Goreshi now from MoneyClip Private Wealth. Sam, I was just wondering if you could please provide us with an update on interest rates.
Yeah, sure, no problem. Well, I guess there's a few things that's occurring in the bank side at the moment. Three key things that I've seen from the bank policy changes. Interest rates itself has been reasonably steady since a week ago. We haven't seen much changes at all in the bank's rates in terms of variable rates or fixed rates. But certainly there are some key changes that we've seen from the banks. One is, funny enough, their service levels have picked up a bit. It looks like as if the big hump of the initial COVID-19 is behind the banks, and they're able to service the clients better. So they're certainly getting back to clients much quicker now than previously. We had some clients that we had to wait 6 weeks, 8 weeks to get an answer from the bank, and that's definitely come back to a week or two. Recently, APRA put out a new guidelines for the banks, and this was around helping people that are affected by COVID-19. And that's around banks being able to offer a switch from a principal and interest repayments to interest only, or extending an interest only period by 12 months under the COVID-19 rules, without having to do a full application. This is a very contentious area of lending in the last few years. It's hurt a lot of borrowers because they haven't been able to convert their interest only loans to P&I. And certainly this is going to help people who have some cash flow squeezes to basically deal with that much better as they go. But you should always understand that the banks are doing these, but if you're behind your payments, banks may ask you to pick up your payments first before they allow you to go from P&I to interest only. And definitely if you're under a deferral payments of some sort, they'll probably ask you to see that out first before they'll make those changes. What's also really important to understand is that the deferral payment means that interest is still being charged, and some clients think that those interests aren't being charged at all for the period. That's incorrect. You still have to make up those payments in due course. So the best plan for it as you go along. And lastly, because of what's been happening in the investment market in particular, generally speaking, most banks used to take 80% of rental income as the servicing number in your loan applications. They've started to drop those to 75 or even 70%, which of course will make it harder for people to be able to borrow at the same levels that they used to do before. So I guess what we're going to see more and more is, despite the fact the rates are lower, this new level of conservatism is going to make it harder for people to still borrow money, essentially, especially if you are in one of the COVID-19 employment occupations, categories or industries, and they are affected by that. For example, in retail, hospitality, obviously in travel and so And that's the update on the interest rate and banking side.
Thanks very much, Sam. That's fantastic. I'm just going to give a bit of an update on what's happening in the tax world at the moment. So the first thing is for JobKeeper. So the ATO over the weekend was ferociously working on their IT systems to be able to cope with all the applications that were going to come in today. So applications did open today on the 1st of June for the May declarations. So that's just a reminder to all businesses out there that they need to go on to the ATO portal or the business portal and make their May declarations in order to receive their JobKeeper payments. So it's not a retest of eligibility, but you do need to go in and you need to say how many employees for this month you are going to be claiming the JobKeeper payment for, and you need to say what your May turnover was, and you need to put what your projected June turnover is. Now, there's over 900,000 businesses in the country on JobKeeper. So as you can imagine, the ATO's systems are going to be struggling. It's taking
I think we've lost Ian there, folks. So in the absence of Ian coming back, today's discussion has been really clever and really good, and we really do appreciate a couple of things. First of all, Daniel Bly, thank you so much for standing in for the infamous Robert Skeen. First of all, I think your insight was actually quite balanced, and we really do appreciate you doing that. Rob's amazing, of course, but to have someone of your caliber standing in for him, we really do appreciate that. Sam obviously is fantastic with his insights, and as is Lisa and Bernard. If there's anyone that's got any questions, please feel free to ask any of the panelists either on the chat bar on this webinar, or by all means, please reach out to them. You will notice that on the screen their company names and their names are there so that you can make contact with them reasonably easily, and we will be going live with this on YouTube and also through other social media forums. Thanks again today for everyone attending. I really do appreciate it. And sorry that Ian dropped out there. I think the internet gremlins have got to him. Either that or he hasn't paid his bill. So we'll look forward to seeing him next week. And don't forget, every Monday from 12 o'clock till 12:30, Business Insights is here for you. That's where people in business go to learn more about how to deal with what they've got to deal with.
Yeah.
Thanks very much.
Yeah. Sorry, Adam. Here's Ian coming back. So
there's Ian.
Very good.
We just closed it off for you, mate. Do you want to finish off with anything?
Welcome back.
So that was just with the JobKeeper. Apologies for that. My internet just did drop out. Just with the JobKeeper, make sure that you get your declarations in as quickly as possible. And yeah, because as I said, the ATO is taking 3 to 5 days to process it, so it's really going to help. So did we go to the questions? Did anyone have
we haven't.
There's a question.
Haven't done that.
Okay, excellent. Well, everybody, I'd like to thank you for attending or watching today. If you have any other questions for our panelists, please feel free to email us. If not, we look forward to seeing you next week for the next episode of Business Insights. Thank you very much to all our panelists as well.
Thanks, guys.
Have a good week, everybody.
Have a good week, everybody.
Yeah, have a great week.
Have a good week.